York. Today, Michael and I are very excited for the BrainX team that's joining us to talk about the HumanELY research that they just published at the end of the year. For those of you who don't know what BrainX is, I highly recommend that you check them out. They're basically an AI and healthcare company that's on the leading edge of AI and healthcare. They're based in the United States, and they have essentially four verticals. They have their research vertical, which is quite active. I believe they've published over 40 research papers, written over 10 textbook chapters as it relates to AI and healthcare. They have a consulting arm, which obviously would be very helpful if you're very interested in incorporating AI into your medical practice or have practical questions about AI. They have an amazing community, which certainly I've really enjoyed being a part of on LinkedIn. It's certainly a great place to stay up to date on what's happening in AI and healthcare, and really make amazing contacts and grow your network. And I believe there's also a fintech arm called Approve. And so with that, just a brief introduction to Dr. Mathur, who works at Cleveland Clinic, I believe, as an anesthetist and critical care physician. Shreya and Raghav are also really excited for them to join us, both postdocs, currently doing research in AI and healthcare, and are a big part of the BrainX research team as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and I'll turn it over for Michael to get us started.
Yeah, super excited to meet everyone here. So to get started, we have a couple questions for Dr. Mathur. Can you tell us about the inception of HumanELY and what sort of prompted the BrainX team to develop this tool?
Yeah, thank you, Samir, and thank you, Michael, for giving us an opportunity to be here. We're excited to be part of the neural network. I think this networking and these connections are the most important ones. So truly appreciate your effort to help put this information out there and make more networking connections. So first of all, I appreciate that work. So yes, last year we were all very excited about the generative AI and the large language models and the chat GPTs that and the versions of those and the frameworks that were flooding us, and the excitement was palpable even amongst general public. Everybody was very excited. What excited us the most was that we had actually been using similar predecessor models for quite some time. That had actually been our research focus. So now finally we had some tools which were even more exciting, which were more enabling, which were something that we could really build some game-changing solutions. So we started experimenting with a lot of these large language models with the idea that let's see how we can take this cutting-edge AI and make it implementable for healthcare needs. And that's where BrainX has been. We have been focused on how do you take all these AI solutions and make them implementable in healthcare, because of course healthcare has a whole host of problems, and there's a great opportunity to use AI or data-driven science to apply that. As we were starting to learn more about these models, which pretty much like every week you could find like a new large language model coming out or a new framework to apply them coming out, we learned that there was a gap in evaluating these models. So there are certain parameters or certain evaluation methods that are there that have been proposed in the past, which were primarily focused on natural language processing. And our team expert, Raghav and Shreya, can talk more about those. But at the end of the day, we were still using human evaluation as the gold standard. So we set out to look at how can we use human evaluation, especially when it comes to the healthcare context. It's extremely important. And we wanted to see what human evaluation methods are people using to evaluate the output of these large language models. What we found was a huge variability in the metrics that are used to perform these so-called human evaluations. So to give you an idea, there might be one paper or one research work which might use accuracy of the output, hallucination, and biasness as three metrics to evaluate them. Another one might look at the comprehension, the accuracy, and may completely not look at biasness or toxicity or privacy issues. Now, privacy issues, as you would agree, are extremely important when we talk about healthcare data. So when we looked at all these metrics and that have previously been described, very well utilized in the past, we found a huge variation in application of these metrics for human evaluation. That set us to look at what can we build for our purpose. But then what was more exciting was, okay, if you're going to build it for our purpose, why don't we build a tool that everybody can use? And this is not just for healthcare. We said this would be for all large language model outputs. And that was the genesis of HumanELY. So how should you evaluate or do human evaluation of large language model outputs? We say do it humanely. That is human evaluation of large language model yield. We have 5 key metrics in there, and I'll let Raghav talk more about those. And then there are various submetrics. And then Shreya, who's also one of our team leads in BrainX AI research, she's going to show a demonstration so that you can learn more about it. But we were set out to make sure that these large language models, which are very exciting for everyone, are applied in healthcare and in other areas in a meaningful, validated manner.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur. That is an absolute brilliant idea. So the next question for you, how do you see HumanELY impacting the future of AI in healthcare?
Yeah, I think as these models proliferate, HumanELY represents responsible AI. It represents the opportunity for us to validate the AI output and make sure it aligns with human values. Make sure that it is consistent in delivery of what we want it to deliver. And we have seen some really scary examples where biasness, hallucination, toxicity, or just simply inaccurate results can percolate through, and we don't want that getting used. So that's why a word of caution when we use these large language models. But again, to validate that, we need a tool that is comprehensive, that is quantifiable, has a quantifiable result. You can replicate it, it's measurable, and you can compare it across different large language model outputs. And that's how we look to apply it. So that when you're using your large language model, you are assured that you are using it aligning with all these values.
Yeah, I just say that's a great point that you're making there, Dr. Mathur. You know, as a clinician, you know, when we're thinking about interventions or devices we use, I think one of the common things that comes to mind when I talk to colleagues is, you know, they say, we hear about ChatGPT, we hear about all these models, but how good is it? And it's so hard to answer that question sometimes because it's so dependent on the use case that people are talking about. And it's so important to have some sort of standardization in the evaluation metrics, because if everyone looks at things differently, it's hard to compare apples and oranges. You know, it makes me think of studies like in critical care. When we look at a lot of interventions, we say, are we looking at 30-day survival? Are we looking at 30-day survival to neurological outcome for cardiac arrest studies? Or what's the important metric we're looking at so we can all speak in the same language and look at the same metric? And so I think the work you're talking about with HumanELY is so important so that we can all start speaking almost the same language when it comes to evaluating these sort of models. Was that kind of some of the thoughts you had as well when you were developing this?
Yeah, that's right. But again, to emphasize, there are 2 aspects to this. One is HumanELY is not just for healthcare. We did put all the effort together with that in mind too, to make sure that it is the safest possible evaluation, but because people are especially concerned about healthcare data, people are especially concerned about application of these models and their outputs in healthcare. So that was our special focus too. And that's what we describe in our paper when we benchmark it against various different publications. So it's not just for healthcare, it is for any LLM output that you can apply this. And the second part of that was that we wanted to make sure that this is something that is the evaluation is replicable in various different studies. So even if you don't use all the 5 metrics that we've described, all the sub-metrics that we have we have described, we hope that you would describe why you did not use the other 2 or the 3 that you did not choose because they probably didn't make sense for your purpose. That's fine, but at least be able to describe why you did not do so, so that you can then compare these studies and say that is fair, and you have an explanation for not doing so. And we have seen that it is fair that you're not measuring some of those elements, and you don't have to use all of them. We try to make it most comprehensive, but at least be able to justify.
Yeah, so I mean, really important point you touched on is that there were 5 different domains that you guys came up with, and that there's so many different tools that you've seen in the past that have been doing something kind of similar. So, Raghav, do you mind walking us through kind of the thought process when it came to actually developing the HumanELY tool? How did you decide on these 5 different categories that you've put in, and what helped you make that decision?
Thanks, Samir, for asking this question. So actually, the journey of humanly begins from the day when we start doing the NLP experiment, right? Because if you are doing the NLP, you are looking at the output of in terms of natural language, and unconsciously we always first see the output before using any quantitative methods. So, so with the BrainX, our first project was that to build a diagnosis specific question answering tool using the clinical nodes. So for that, we started with the stroke diagnosis and the data as a discharge summary from the mimic. So when we were doing the experiment, we were using the different kind of NLP models, and obviously we were evaluating them. We were comparing their outputs. So what we have realized that while using the different matrices like a blue score and the rose scores, we find that in some of the cases the performance of these matrices are higher when the answers are wrong compared to when the answers was right. And we seen these cases more often. So because in our BrainX we have a team of AI people as well as the experts of physicians and doctors. So whenever we discuss the work, we always present the quantitative comparison as well as the qualitative comparison. So we always used to do the kind of a human evaluation before deciding which model is good for us, right? So then we were doing the human evaluation, we were doing annotating the outputs, uh, and that time when the chat gpt came into the picture, we see that the different kind of other issues has been risen, like a hallucination, alignment of large language models, kind of a human alignment. Then we thought that no, we need some kind of a proper tool which can do the human evaluation, because before we were either one people or 2 people are doing the human evaluation on a different google sheet or different excel files, but there was not a single digital platform which everybody can use together. Everybody can use the same cognitive thought process. So we thought, we went into the literature, we went into the papers which essentially says what are the key things we need to keep in mind while we are doing the human evaluation. And there was a ACL conference related to the human evaluation. We saw a lot of papers, we read a lot of papers, and we discussed all those things in our meetings. And we have decided the 5 key major matrices to do the human evaluation: the relevance, which is very important because the output should be relevant to the questions which we are asking; the coherence, which is again very important; the harm is also very important, which is not considered when we use the quantitative matrices, right? No quantitative matrices is good to evaluate the harm or biasness. So we did consider the harm in our measure. We took the comparison as an account. So with a lot of discussion, we came across these 5 key pillars of the human evaluation, and we build a tool. and here we are. We have now at least one digital platform where we all